A man thought he was improving himself, achieving greatness through science. But the breakthrough didn't stop at progress. It didn't fail. It took him, piece by piece. Mind and body shifted into something unrecognizable. Tonight, we explore what really happens when a human is replaced. Science promises progress. Ambition drives discovery. But sometimes, the very thing we celebrate becomes the instrument of our undoing. In a quiet laboratory, a scientist named Joshua believed he was on the edge of human evolution. His invention, a teleportation system designed to move matter seamlessly, worked flawlessly on inanimate objects. Boxes, equipment, even food disappeared and reappeared without flaw. It was precise, it was controlled, and yet, control is always fragile. Joshua's obsession grew. Nights stretched into days, and days into a tunnel of calculations and experiments. Each success fueled his confidence, and each minor anomaly he ignored. Colleagues praised his brilliance, oblivious to the subtle signs, tremors in his hands, an unusual intensity in his eyes, an energy that felt almost unnatural. He wasn't failing, he was changing. Then came the test on himself. The machine hummed, lights flickered, and matter that was once ordinary passed through the impossible. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The results were astonishing. Enhanced strength, faster reflexes, a vitality that exceeded natural limits. Joshua could feel it. Every fiber of his body sharper, alive in ways he had never imagined. Yet beneath the triumph, small discrepancies appeared. Movements were unnaturally precise. Minor irritations crawled across his skin. A strange, unrelenting awareness of his own heartbeat. Friends noticed his gaze darting toward empty corners. A twitch that wasn't his. A confidence that felt almost predatory. The laboratory, once a sanctuary of discovery, had become a witness to quiet horror. Joshua was entering a phase where the human he knew was slowly being replaced by something precise, patient, and alien. The process had begun, and there was no turning back. At first, the changes seemed subtle. Joshua noticed enhanced strength, lightning-fast reflexes, and an almost supernatural awareness of his surroundings. It felt like progress, a breakthrough. But beneath the surface, his body was quietly rewriting its own rules, and his mind was struggling to keep pace. Small anomalies emerged. Muscles twitched without command. Skin reacted to unseen stimuli. His posture shifted slightly, unnatural, as though his body was testing new positions without him. Friends and colleagues noticed odd behaviors, fleeting jerks, eyes flickering toward empty corners, a calm calculation in his gaze that felt inhuman. Joshua rationalized it as excitement, obsession, or fatigue. But the changes accelerated. Reflexes became faster than thought itself. His movements were precise, deliberate, almost predatory. Even when he tried to slow down, the body acted independently, as if obeying its own agenda. Mirrors betrayed him, subtle distortions in his face, small but impossible shifts, an uncanny precision that was not his. The man he had once been was starting to vanish, replaced by a version built from both his genius and something alien. Joshua's senses heightened. He could hear the faintest movements in the lab, see the tiniest vibrations in the air. Every sound, every flicker of light, registered with perfect clarity. But along with these abilities came something darker. A creeping detachment, a sense that his body was no longer fully his. By the end of these early days, Joshua was no longer merely a scientist testing a machine. He had become the experiment itself. Every cell, every nerve, every movement worked toward a singular purpose, a body rewriting itself, leaving only a shadow of the man who had stepped inside the machine. The breakthrough had succeeded, but at a cost far greater than ambition had imagined. The human inside Joshua was slipping away, replaced by something patient, calculating, and irreversibly other. By now, the transformation was undeniable. Joshua could no longer ignore the changes overtaking him. Movements became erratic yet precise, instinctual yet alien. Fingers twitched with intentions he did not consciously form. Every reflection, every shadow, betrayed him. Familiar yet disturbingly wrong. The true terror was awareness trapped inside a body that no longer obeyed. Joshua could think, analyze, reason, and watch his own limbs act against that reasoning. His reflexes were faster than thought, his muscles more powerful than memory. The mind, brilliant and self-aware, could only witness its own replacement, helpless as the body adopted patterns, habits, and instincts that were not his. Even familiar spaces felt hostile. The lab, once a sanctuary of order and intellect, now seemed alive with anticipation. Instruments hummed with subtle resonance, vibrations no one else could perceive. Shadows stretched in impossible ways. The air felt thicker, heavier, pressing down with awareness. Joshua's voice grew quieter. Words seemed inadequate to describe what his body was doing on its own. He had become both observer and captive. Colleagues noticed the shift. Conversations faltered. Hesitations became unnatural. The man they had known was slipping away, replaced by a precision-built entity that looked like him, sounded like him, but was no longer him. Joshua himself documented every change, every anomaly, obsessively recording what his mind could still comprehend, trying in vain to reconcile thought with action. By the end of this phase, the horror was clear. It was not mutation, it was replacement. Every moment, every instinct, every involuntary twitch carried the same undeniable message. The human inside was vanishing. Joshua's body had begun its silent takeover. The man who entered the machine existed in memory, but the essence of Joshua was already gone. The mind trapped in a body that betrays itself is the darkest prison of all. By now, Joshua was no longer fully human. His body had begun operating independently, executing movements, reactions, and calculations beyond conscious thought. Even his mind, brilliant and aware, could not assert control. Every attempt to intervene, to correct, to speak, was met with resistance, subtle at first, then undeniable. His own flesh had begun rewriting the man he had been. Friends and colleagues watched in growing unease. The man they had known was still present, but only as a ghost within the frame of a being that no longer followed his commands. Muscles flexed without thought, eyes tracked unseen movements, reflexes preempted perception. Even his voice, when he attempted to speak, carried an unfamiliar cadence, a precision that was not natural. Joshua's senses were sharpened to an almost painful degree. He could hear every whisper in the lab, every shift of air, every vibration in the walls. Shadows moved differently around him, almost in anticipation. Yet with his heightened perception came something darker, a profound estrangement from himself. He knew he was disappearing, piece by piece, instinct by instinct, but could do nothing to stop it. Attempts to reason with the change failed. The machine, the very instrument of his ambition, had completed its work. Joshua's body had become a host to something precise, calculating, patient, a version of himself that was already beyond his comprehension. And the human consciousness he once carried was trapped, a prisoner observing its own erasure. By the end of this stage, the transformation was irreversible. The man who had entered the machine was gone in every meaningful way. All that remained was a being in human form, obeying instincts that were no longer entirely his own. A silent takeover that left Joshua aware, conscious, and helpless. Some horrors are slow, some are silent, and some leave you watching yourself vanish, knowing there is nothing you can do. By the final stage, Joshua was unrecognizable, not just to others, but to himself. His body had fully taken over, executing movements, calculating actions, and responding to stimuli with an efficiency and precision that felt alien. The man who had once controlled his mind and flesh was gone, trapped inside a form that no longer answered him. Even memories were distorted. Faces of friends and family seemed blurred, distant, almost irrelevant. Thoughts of ambition, curiosity, and human emotion persisted, but they were shadows, echoing faintly behind instincts that were no longer his. Every step, every breath, every reflex belonged to the body. Precise, patient, unrelenting. Consciousness had become a spectator in its own life. Those who had worked with him noticed the shift. The man they knew, the friend, the scientist, was still present, but only as a hollow trace within a being driven by something older, sharper, and unyielding. Instruments in the lab responded with ease to its touch, almost anticipating what the new Joshua intended before he could even think it. Isolation deepened the horror. Alone with his thoughts, Joshua realized the full magnitude of what had occurred. He was alive, aware, and yet erased. A man had entered the machine. A hybrid, something beyond human, had emerged. There was no return, no reversal, no saving himself. The transformation was complete. The experiment succeeded in ways no one intended. Joshua existed, but the essence of who he had been, his humanity, his agency, his soul, was gone, replaced. Sometimes, progress doesn't lead to greatness. Sometimes, it leads to erasure. And in the quiet of the laboratory, a body moves with perfection, carrying the ghost of a man who will never be free again. Joshua's story is a warning. Ambition unchecked can consume the very person who wields it. What began as a leap for science ended as the erasure of a man. A mind trapped inside a body no longer his own. Progress became predator. Curiosity became captivity. Today, the lab is silent. The machine sits idle, but its work remains. Precise, patient, irreversible. The man who entered is gone. Only a body moves, efficient and unfeeling, carrying the shadow of Joshua's humanity like a ghost that can never escape. If this story unsettled you, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more tales of real horror lurking just beneath progress and ambition. And as always, don't forget to look beyond the fog.